Good evening, everyone. Back by popular demand, myself and Danny here from ESPR, looking to review the card that took place this evening, the boxer card in Coventry. We're going to keep this relatively short and sweet, so I'd like to apologise at the outset from anyone that I may omit, unfortunately, due to time constraints in the review. But we'll start off just by asking you, Danny, how did you enjoy the card? Did you watch all the way through?
Watched it the whole way through, mate, from the main card. On the sort of televised part, didn't see the fights on like social media or YouTube before the bell or whatever they're calling it, but saw right through from 7 o'clock in Sky. Yeah, enjoyed it. Actually, really enjoyed it. Any sort of Saturday night domestic boxing card, it's for the likes of ourselves, the hardcores. It's much more you can ask for. But no, I enjoyed the card, definitely. A lot to talk about. I'm sure we'll try and
we'll tuck in, and obviously in the interest of brevity, we'll probably keep it to, I think, 3 fights. Just to sort of seems like a good number. So we'll start off actually with the Tyler Denny Wilson Bent fight, which obviously was for the English middleweight title. Off air, well, I say off air. I mean, I've seen on Twitter that you were tweeting essentially about Denny stepping up to British level and potentially not having the power. So I was going to actually ask you first and foremost, just to sort of elaborate on that really, and how you see and where you see Denny going from here.
Like 100%. First off, it was definitely not like a slight on Denny. I thought he put in such a dogged, determined performance. As Adam Smith sort of said in the commentary, there was the sense that he wanted it just that bit more against the sort of maybe technically slightly superior boxer in River Wilson Bent. The only reason I sort of thought that he might lack the power to sort of push on too much further than English level was he caught River Wilson Bent like flush on the chin countless times and like full leverage in the shot, full rotation in the shot a couple of times. And I mean, he definitely felt them. He definitely hurt them to an extent, but at no real point did you think River Wilson Bent was going anywhere. And you look at that British champion like Denzel Bentley, who's not too dissimilar in style to Tyler Denny, but has that fight-ending power. And I think that just would be the difference if he did move up to British level. But again, that's not to take away from him tonight. I made money on him tonight, so definitely not a Tyler Denny sort of detraction session here. That was just sort of where I was coming from with that.
Let me just ask you as well, just about that fight. Obviously, there's been a bit of, I suppose, controversy. Well, I'll ask you actually how you scored it, really. Because obviously there was a lot of controversy with Steve Bray's card, where he actually gave the fight to Wilson Bent. So how did you see it? Was it a wide victory for Denny in your book?
In my eyes, it was a wide victory. I give River Wilson Bent 3 rounds. I could see 4. I couldn't see much more than that. And then you factor in the point deduction as well. I really cannot see how you can award River Wilson Bent that fight 6 rounds to 4 or whatever it was. I mean, again, especially factoring, I thought that was a really poor card, to be honest. Ultimately, didn't matter. The right man got his hand raised. But when even the Sky commentator, when the commentary team say that, like, sort of conclusively think a winner, you think, right, we'll see. I see a UD here, a unanimous decision. I just thought it was a really poor card, but thankfully, sort of no lasting impact.
Let's go into. I'm going to take the next fight. Actually, I'm going to go into is the Eggington fight. Obviously, this is a headline fight tonight. Handed the Polish fighter his first defeat. Now, let me just get your thoughts basically on that performance. I think we were talking briefly off air about it being a surprise that it went 12 rounds initially. But if I can just get your thoughts on that fight and how Eggington performed, please.
It was like a fight to sort of 2 halves, or maybe even like 3/3 or whatever. Because like, as we were sort of saying in like the ESPR chat, like the first 2 rounds, it looked to me like Zisk had just sort of froze. Eggington was landing at will. He was so upright. He wasn't moving his head at all. And Eggington's not like a concussive puncher, but you couldn't have saw that fight going 6 rounds, let alone the full 12. Then sort of through, 4 or 5 around then, Zisk like really sort of came back into it. I think Eggington probably slowed down around that stage. Zisk, I gave him a few rounds in the fight. And then sort of from like 7, 8, 9 into the sort of, the last quarter of the fight, as sort of, I think it was maybe Matt Macklin or one of the ones said on commentary that Eggington had sort of realised like this fella is going absolutely nowhere, so just conserve my gas tank to an extent to see this out and take as little damage as possible. But it was an entertaining fight, as Sam Eggington fights always are. I mean, it wasn't exactly Pernell Whitaker versus Floyd Mayweather in there, but Sam Eggington, he's always, as it's cliched now, always value for money. You know what you're going to get, and he got the job done against stubborn, puts it lightly, opponent and big Zisk.
What I want to ask you now, I suppose, is because obviously, I mean, it's been, irrespective, I suppose, of whether you think the IBO belt is a recognised world title, but I'm looking at it and going, where do you see Sam Eggington going on, because we've seen him fight. If you look at the British, I suppose, British fighters in that division there, I suppose ranked above him. You obviously got Liam Smith, who's beaten him fairly convincingly, 5th round KO. Troy Williamson in that conversation as well is another world ranked fighter. Do you see Eggington troubling Williamson were they to fight? Do you see Eggington really being able to get into any established top 10 of any sort of established world title, or do you think he's essentially at his level now, really? And then where would you take him after this?
Well, worse fighters than Sam Eggington have made it into the governing bodies top 10s, definitely. I think the Troy Williamson fight's unlikely. I think due to Williamson being with Probellum, I think Eggington himself even said he has no real interest. I think he sort of sees himself as not being better than British level, because obviously he lost to Cheeseman in a close fight. But I think he sort of sees himself as done with it, and he's sort of fell into that like category of fighters who's just big fights, fun fights, and sort of crowd pleasing fights. In terms of where I would go with him, I'd love the Cheeseman rematch. I know Cheeseman's sort of on a bit of a sabbatical after that like brutal fight and brutal knockout against Troy Williamson. I'm not sure what necessarily his promotional thing will be with regards to DAZN. I can't imagine he's one of the fighters, DAZN would be putting money hand over foot to keep. I'd love to see the rematch. I'd love to see Kerman Liharaga, just lost to JJ Metcalf again. Another fighter is just, only knows one way to go, as does Eggington. It'd be another brutal fight. It'd be another such a fan-friendly fight. But with Eggington, you sort of wonder, because, he was in there with Zisk, who tough game, but, really average, and he's still shipping shots, still shipping big shots, and he's been in so many wars. Every fight he has is a war. And you wonder how long this can keep going. As a fan, you would hope, obviously that he keeps his faculties and it keep going as long as possible. But just more big fun fights. The couple of names I mentioned, I think a world title's a bit. I suppose he's got a world title, but like one of the 4 recognised ones, maybe a bit wishful thinking. But yeah, just more fun fights would be my.
No, I totally agree. I think you're exactly right. I think it is surprising that he's only 28, and you think of the amount of fights he's had, the amount of rounds he's had, the amount of wars he's been in. You think, fucking, like you say, like, I don't know. Surely I'm not expecting him to be one of those fighters that continues into his late 30s. I just think it's almost impossible. But we'll go to the final fight we'll touch on, which has got a lot of traction, I suppose, is the performance of Adam Azim, who's now 5-0, who beat Anthony Lovett tonight for that, I believe, the World Youth Intercontinental Super Lightweight title, which in itself is an accomplishment. But I think it was more the way that the performance that he put in, and obviously the potential going beyond this fight. So first off, I'd just like to get your thoughts on the performance, on Adam's performance this evening.
The performance sort of spoke for itself, didn't it? He looks really, really special, does Adam Azim. And the thing is, like, I don't think he goes into these fights, like, obviously his last fight was another, like, 30-second knockout, whatever it was. I don't think, judging from interviews and judging from, interviews with Shane McGuigan, that he goes into these fights looking to, like, bowl people over. I think he's just got so much natural speed that he hits people so sharply and quickly, and then they're rocked. And as a fighter, you go after them. But, flawless performance, so fast. And, I think we're going to come on to the whole Amir Khan thing in a second, the sort of comparisons there, but the similarities to sort of what Khan's early career was like and what he was doing to sort of those fighters in that early stage of his career. So, like, taking away the whole, like, community Asian thing that they've got going, they're so similar regardless of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, because obviously there's the community aspect to it, but also can you see, pure boxing style, if you take that aspect of it away, the similarities between Amir Khan and Adam Azim?
Yeah, I think the hand speed is the sort of most obvious comparison you could draw. I think Khan probably threw and at that age combinations quicker, but I think Azim's straight shots are faster, if you get what I'm saying. Azim looks so much more of an athlete, like, to look at physically than Khan did at that stage, and I think he carries more power. I know Khan was knocking a lot of people out early as well, but just on the eye test, it would appear Azim's probably got more power than Khan. Again, it's apart from that, I'm not sure what comparisons you can really draw, because we've not seen his defense tested, we've not seen his chin tested, which was obviously sort of Khan's main drawback throughout his career. But he's an entertaining, fast, young fighter who's finishing people and finishing them rapidly.
Let's look at your views, because again, obviously we're saying again, not fair, like 19, 20 years old. ridiculous to be at this stage at that age as well. But development-wise, I suppose if you think, I mean, this is his third fight this year, but I suppose his second against a guy who's with an undefeated record that he stopped in the first round. Where do you take it from here? I mean, if we look at, I'm just going to start throwing sort of, obviously in that division, there's a lot of sort of British names obviously around that division. But if you look at are those Casey Benjamins on the card a lot tonight as well, Dalton Smith, Sam Maxwell, Ennis Brown, these sort of names. Where would you put Adam Azim in the next year? How would you sort of plan out his next year for starters?
I think the Ryland Charlton fight's one that was gaining a lot of traction online. That's one I would like to see next, if not the fight after next. I think Charlton will ask questions of him, or should ask questions of him. You know what you're going to get with Ryland Charlton. He'll come forward, he'll make it physical, he can punch a bit, and he'll not stop throwing and trying to win. And then if he fights a Ryland Charlton who is maybe not top British level, but is definitely a British level fighter. He lost a very close decision to Luke Wallace, who went on to fight for the British title and only didn't lose massively to Gavin Gwynn. So if he's making light work of the likes of Ryland Charlton, it sort of depends what they want to do with him. If they want to if the British title for him is something they want to win, then that's what you could take and look to sort of secure in, I think, the first sort of quarter of next year. I think Azim, from what we've seen now, is the talent that you can look to fast track. If I had to sort of pick 3 fights for him to have, not necessarily as his next 3, but say 3 with sort of a couple sprinkled in between each one. I'd like to see the Ryland Charlton one. I'd like to see him fight Gavin Gwynn for the British, and then sort of like an ex-world champion who's maybe just on the decline, like someone like an Ivan Baranchik, sort of been stopped his last 2. Obviously, what, again, as I say, was a former world champion, has shown maybe a sign that the punch resistance is going a bit. Isn't particularly elusive, will be there for Azim to hit there to look good at. And I think promoters are always quite cautious with these prospects, aren't they? And I suppose Sky will be, because of how big Azim can be, but that's a route I would potentially say. But again, it all depends on what they want to do with him, what McGuigan wants to do with him.
There was also talk, wasn't there, tonight? I've seen it in certain quarters about potentially fighting Dylan Cheema, who was also on the card. Now, obviously, like you were saying, with Sky looking to build different fighters, it would seem that would be unlikely to happen. And also, I think Azim would make fairly light work of Cheema. I think we're probably in agreement that would happen. So yeah, I mean, I suppose just coming to your final thoughts on Adam Azim, really. I mean, it's very hard to say, obviously, with 5 fights in, but you're sitting there going, if I just say to you, where would you rank him in regards to kind of prospects in this country, exciting prospects in this country? I mean, obviously you've got other, fighters, let's take, obviously the zone, you've got people like sort of Campbell Hatton, those sort of that sort of level of sort of prospect. Where do you rank him? Do you think he's right up there as one of the most exciting fighters we've got so far?
I would say after, not just tonight and his previous fight, but sort of listening to Shane McGuigan and people around him talk about him, and people, not everyone necessarily is a massive Shane McGuigan fan, but he's not someone who gets carried away with these fighters ever. He's very level-headed. I think he's probably the prospect I'm most excited about from these shores. Definitely, he's obviously at a bit of an earlier stage than a Dalton Smith, who's another sort of top tier British prospect. He's obviously fighting for the British quite soon. But in terms of natural ability, what people say, and then just the eye test, I mean, I can't off the top of my head think of a prospect I'm more excited about than Adam Azim. I mean, what it would say is you don't. If you go online, I know we're both sort of big boxing Twitter men or whatever, you never see anyone that I've seen sort of question, will Adam Azim win a world title? It's all how many weight classes. And obviously a lot can go wrong between 5 fights in, fighting the likes of the fella he was now, and becoming a multi-weight world champion. But at this stage, it's hard not to get really excited about the fact we're just about to witness potentially a all-time great British career. He's that good. That's 100% on the cards. No,
I totally agree with you, Denny. And actually, yeah, I think that's a great way to end it. To be fair, on what has been, I suppose, a decent card. That was the highlight, I think, for everyone to see that performance. Definitely. Even though it was obviously, like you say, 5 fights in. There'll be a tougher test to come, but equally, the way he's sort of going about it at the moment is thoroughly exciting. So, thank you guys for watching. Danny, thank you for joining me and talking about it. I know you're going to go and rest and recuperate for possibly another card that's happening tonight. And I'm also going to go and recuperate. So thank you very much, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll be in touch again with another review, no doubt, for another boxing show in the future. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Danny.
Cheers. Cheers, mate.